Hi everyone, Rob B here with Rob D, and you are listening to the Property Podcast, episode 237. This week, we have one mission: to help you get your property offers accepted.
Yes, we have. So last week we were in deal hunting mode. We were looking through your deals. We really loved doing that. And everyone was saying things like, I'm hoping to get the property at around about this price, or I want to pay this much. Well, how do you do that? How do you make it more likely that you're able to get the property for the price you want? That is what we're going to be digging into today. Before we do that, a few quick announcements. It's meetup time again. How do they come around so quickly? They really are only monthly, but it does feel like more often than that. It's the first Thursday of every month. So on Thursday, the 5th of October, we have got meetups. They are all over the place. There's bound to be one near you. They're really good fun, so get along. Thepropertyhub.net/meetups is the place to go to get your ticket. And also, Rob, we've got another event last week. We're holding a webinar for magazine subscribers.
We are, so you wonderful magazine subscribers, if you don't know what we're talking about, go to thepropertyhub.net/magazine. For those who subscribe to the Property Hub magazine, you get a webinar thrown in as part of your subscription, which seems incredible value to me. A magazine for a £5 delivered, and a webinar every time it goes out. Well, we do like to give value, and that's exactly what we'll be doing on Wednesday the 4th at 6 p.m. We'll be having our next magazine webinar exclusively for the magazine subscribers. So if you are a subscriber, you'll probably have an invite headed into your inbox any day now. For those who aren't subscribers, well, why not? As I've said, it's really good value, so make yourself one. Go to thepropertyhub.net/magazine, sign up. You get a wonderful printed magazine through your letterbox every single quarter, and you get access online to the whole back catalogue as well. All the previous issues, you can read them at your leisure. And the next one, Rob, actually isn't too far away.
Yeah, putting the finishing touches to it right now. It's a good one. I was having a read through everything just the other day. We've got a big feature. The cover feature is on the housing crisis, how to solve it. We are looking back at 10 years since the credit crunch. Really interesting feature, that one, actually. And our location focus, which is always super popular, is on Cardiff, which is actually somewhere we haven't talked about very much, but I keep running into people who are big fans of Cardiff. So we thought we would put it in the spotlight. So yeah, all that is in there. So if you're a subscriber, you'll be getting that before too long, shaping up to be a very strong issue, as always.
And as always, before we get into the main topic, we'd like to look at a news story, bring you something that's happening in the property market right now. And Rob, you've picked this week's story. It's from City AM. The headline questions, is a buyer's market on the way? UK property transactions fall again.
Yeah, so this is figures from HMRC showing that property transactions, the number of homes bought and sold, fell by 0.5% between July and August this year, which doesn't sound like much. It's not a massive fall, but this is significant because apart from when there was the stamp duty deadline last year and there's a big rush of transactions and a fall afterwards, the number of transactions hasn't fallen since 2009. Obviously, post-crisis, everything dried up, but volume has been coming back since then. But now, as well as prices falling in some areas, being stagnant in others, now the number of transactions is falling as well. So it all plays into this sort of mid-cycle dip that we've been talking about, where transactions fall, prices tend to follow. And this leads me to make a bit of a prediction. And I should probably wait for our predictions episodes because normally one chance a year to look silly is enough. But I feel like I need to get it in there quickly just in case they rush out and do it before we get to Christmas. But I reckon there's going to be a stamp duty cut in probably the next year, but definitely the next 2 years. Probably not for investors is the caveat. They'll probably exclude us from these things. But I think something's going to be done with stamp duty, some kind of exemption or holiday or cut or something, because this seems like a real pain point for everyone. And yeah, for investors, it's kind of annoying, but we don't have to buy. For homeowners who do need to move for some reason, it's a real issue because a lot of people aren't selling up because it's so expensive to move. Lots of people not wanting to sell, people not wanting to buy because of the stamp duty, which in London is particularly mental. So I think falling transactions, not good news for anyone. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if we saw an intervention to get things moving again.
Bold, Rob. I like it. An unprompted prediction.
Yeah, there you go. Possibly foolish, but, well, I'm putting my faith here in the government to spot something and take action about it. So,
all right, I'm going to hold you. All right, that's it. Faith in the government. Let's cut the podcast there. No, actually, in all fairness, Rob, it makes sense, a stamp duty cut. I've seen a lot of people commentating on it, calling for it, asking for it. Nobody's saying they expect it yet, but to be fair to you, I wouldn't fall off my seat in shock if that happened. And also, would I be surprised, like you said, if it only applied to certain people and not investors? But it does seem like it's really holding the market back. And yeah, to come back to your point, putting faith in the government, at some point they've got to see it, haven't they? At some point, they've got to see it's holding the market back.
You would hope so. There's also a proposal out the other day to shift it to sellers rather than buyers. It's sort of interesting. But I can see something happening because it's not a happy situation when people are sort of stuck and there's not much on the market. And it seems to be a lack of supply that's really holding things up more than anything. So we will see.
We will.
So let's get moving to the topic for the week. So assuming that you can find a property to buy and you don't mind paying the stamp duty, you'll be wanting to make an offer on that property and try to add it to your collection. Making an offer, obviously, is really easy. Anyone can make an offer, but how you do it matters. People think a lot about how much to offer. That's always a really big focus. What should I be paying? How low should I go? That sort of thing. But it's not just that. How you present the offer matters as well as the number. So we're going to give you some pointers this week to maximize the chance of getting your offer accepted. So Rob, we've got a fair few things to talk about when it comes to the offer itself, but really your chances of getting your offer accepted start way before you make the offer itself.
Absolutely. The first tip or the first piece of advice we want to give out here is, it may sound like an obvious one, but not one people will do, or actually I find rarely do, but it's build a relationship. And that's build a relationship with the person you're dealing with. Now, quite often that's the agent. There's an agent between you and the vendor, but sometimes you're dealing with the vendor. Whoever you're dealing with, whether it be the agent or the vendor, build on that relationship. Now, that doesn't mean take them round a nice hamper on your first visit and wine and dine them, but actually just a few simple things will go a long way. So first of all, showing you're professional. Just pointing out that you're not somebody who messes around. Asking good questions is key. That's really important. So asking really good quality questions can go a long way, particularly when you get to the negotiation stage, by trying to find out what they want, what the vendor wants. Most people approach a transaction or an offer from their point of view, what they want to do. And I think once you've built that relationship up, before you go into the steps of putting that offer in, which you're about to do, I think what's really, really important is try and understand and get as much information as you can to what's important to the vendor or the vendor's agent or both. Really work hard at that. And now remember, the first few questions might not get you the information you need, so persevere. But once you understand where the motivations lie for the agent and the vendor, because remember, strictly speaking, you need to please the vendor. But actually, with an agent there as well, they need to be on side because they can make things easier or a lot harder. So by asking questions, understanding what's important, you can structure an offer that will be far more appealing. So really, that's the first tip. Build a relationship. And then second tip, ask good questions. Understand the motivations of the vendor and the agent. And that'll go a long way to making this next part easier.
Yeah, asking questions really is the key. And like Rob said, it actually builds a relationship as well as gathering information. Because people often say, oh, it's really important to build a relationship. But then often you're sitting there thinking, well, okay, but how? Should I be taking them a bottle of wine? What does that actually mean, build a relationship? But asking the questions actually does build the relationship as well as finding out what you need to know. Okay, so the relationship is being built. Now you want to actually make an offer on a property. So for the purposes of this, we'll kind of assume that you're dealing with an agent, because most of the time that's the case. It's pretty much the same if you're dealing direct with the vendor. But the first decision is, well, do you put the offer in writing? This is something I see a lot of questions about on forums. People asking, well, should I write a letter? Should I email? Should I call up? What shall I do? And the answer really is, well, it doesn't matter that much. People have their different ways of doing it. Different things work for different investors. A verbal offer is every bit as official as a written one. If you're making an offer to an estate agent, you don't have to put it in writing in order for it to be put to the vendor. If you make it over the phone, they will write it down, they will pass it on. It's every bit as proper. So it's your choice as to which to do. The way that I like to do it is to make a verbal offer first and then follow up in writing. Because as we'll talk about, there are different ways to frame an offer. So I find that if you have a conversation, it's easier to talk about the offer, to put it in context, to make sure that they understand the relative strengths of it, and then put it in writing later so they've actually got it. You don't have to do it that way. You can do whatever works for you.
Yeah, Rob, how you go out and offer and how I approach it as well is exactly the same. It's so important to get on the phone. So many people are afraid of having a conversation, then they hide behind emails. And going back to that relationship point as well, it's so much colder if you only put your offer in writing. So I will do all the negotiation up on the phone or in person right until I've presented an offer verbally, and then absolutely follow it up in an email to make sure that what my interpretation of the offer is what they've interpreted, and there's no confusion. Because I have seen it where expectations of deals have made it difficult further down the line because up front it wasn't clearly communicated. So definitely go with the double approach. Don't do one or the other. Go with both. Call or speak to them in person and then follow up in writing. So the next one, Rob, is really interesting as well. Should you explain your offer if it's a low one, if you're not going and asking? And often it should be a low one. Well, that's my opinion, but we'll come to that in a minute. Now, that's fine. But if you do, it may come as a surprise to the person who's receiving that offer if it's just come out the blue. So should you explain a low offer or not? What's your take on this?
Well, this is something that, again, people get quite divided on. There are some investors who think it's important to explain how they got to a low offer. So say that the asking price is 100,000 and you're offering 80. Should you just go in and say 80? And leave it at that? Or should you explain how you got to that? So should you say, well, it's going to cost me £10,000 to refurb it. I need to make a profit margin on it, etc., etc. An opinion is split on the other end of sides as well. Some agents I've spoken to said that they like to understand how investors get to their offer because it helps them put it forward to their client. Whereas others are just like, do not waste my time. I just want to know. I need to put it to the vendor, but I don't need to have a 10-minute waffle about your business model. So people really are divided. I find that for me, it's something that I touch on as part of the conversation, so around the whole process of framing the offer. So I don't break open the spreadsheet and sort of take them line by line through it and explain in detail how everything works. But normally, as part of having a chat, you'll naturally talk about what it is that you're trying to achieve and where you think the property sits, whether the price seems to be realistic. You'll have talked about what the vendor's expectations are. So I would say that I don't necessarily explain a low offer, but it's probably not going to come as a complete shock because it's not like we met for 2 minutes, talked about the weather, and then a couple of days later they get an email with a number. So I'd be interested to hear about what you do, Rob. But I would say I don't explain a low offer, but if I've done my job properly, that low offer shouldn't come as too much of a shock.
Yeah, that's right, Rob. I mean, communication is key. So as we said, you should have been asking questions early on anyway and really getting an understanding of what's playing out in the minds of the seller and the agent. But that also includes explaining your position and understanding what you're trying to achieve from any offer you're going to put in. So if that relationship's been built, any offer that comes in should be expected, should be understood. Now, sometimes it is harder to build that relationship. Sometimes the agent just doesn't want to know. I feel at that point it may be worth explaining the offer, but with a huge caveat here, do not become annoying. So don't go in, I've put this offer in because of X, Y, and Z, and it's really, they will just do their nut. They'll present your offer in the worst absolute light. So what you want to do is just control the narrative, if you like. Think about how you want that offer to be presented to the vendor from the agent. So I like to guide them with it, just kind of almost give them the script, if you like, to what I want them to say to the vendor. Not as patronising as that possibly sounds, done in a slightly more effective way, but just guiding them to say, it's done like this, and have you seen that? And I think this will cause this, or just generally a much higher level point of view. So not getting into the nitty gritty of the detail, but just a higher level guidance. So that's presented to the vendor. Because if it is a low offer, and it has sort of come out the blue, you haven't been able to achieve the relationship and all the things we talked about before, then it's the agent then who's controlling the narrative of that offer. So we used the example before, 120 to 80. If there's no communication, it's 120, 80,000. The agent's going to then decide what to say afterwards, because they're not going to say 80,000 to go quiet. They're going to go 80,000, but I don't think you should take that, or I think it's a silly offer, but I'll just put it to you anyway. You can see what's going to happen. They almost feel like they have to explain it themselves of why it's so low. So for that reason, I'd like to give high-level detail if for some reason the first point of achieving that relationship and the ongoing communication hasn't happened. So not loads of detail. Don't become annoying. Don't teach them how to do their job, but just guide them with the headline details of why that number is how I'd go about it.
That's great advice, and I'm sure done correctly, they'll actually appreciate being given some sort of talking points, so they're not just left to go off and have an awkward conversation with their client. They've actually been given something to work with. So done correctly, rather than patronising, it's actually helpful. Okay, so we've talked about the circumstances around the offer. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty and talk about the offer itself. So Rob, I really want to know your take on this one. So if you're doing this properly, you're going to basically disregard the asking price. So forget the asking price. Doesn't matter. What matters is the maximum that you are willing to pay for the property. So let's go back to our example. Ignore the asking price, whatever that was, but you're going to pay 80. That is the maximum that it makes sense for you to pay. Now, much as I said ignore the asking price, you're still aware that this is a fair bit below what the vendor actually wanted. So bearing that in mind, what should you do? Should you just go in with 80 firm and leave it at that because you're sort of aware that it's already a low offer? Or should you go in lower than that to give yourself some room to come up? How would you go about doing that?
So I like to give myself some room. I just feel in property that most people don't take serious the first offer. They almost expect it to be an opening bid, whether that's true or not. I just think it's now ingrained as part of the culture of the industry that your first offer isn't your best offer, even if it is. So I don't go like something silly and go half of my maximum. I have an intention of my first offer will be close to my maximum. And then my second offer, generally, because I don't want to do 4 weeks of negotiating, my second offer then will be either in or around the maximum. And, possibly 3 bids max is where I'd want to be going. I don't want this to run on and on and on. Remember, I've presented myself as someone who's serious, someone who wants to move quickly. I've done all that at the beginning. If I'm prepared to spend 4 weeks on an offer, moving back and forward and gradually moving it up a few grand or £100 every time, then I've completely blown away that image. So my first offer is normally close to my maximum or close enough to my maximum that I can move up and give myself that little bit of wriggle room. And I think that's just a psychology play, just to move their expectations of their number in their head, possibly, by making it lower and then going to maximum. Now, in the past, I have done things differently. I've gone much lower and I've moved around, but this is where I've found that is the happy medium now for myself anyway, and I found most effective is go a bit below it. I'm really happy if I get that deal, which is below the maximum I was willing to pay. But I'm also prepared to go to my maximum, which, because of the offers I put in anyway, I'd be very happy with too. So that's how I approach it. Rob, what's your take?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I do similar. I've experimented with different things, sort of tending towards sort of what you do, like going close to the maximum and then going up once and then sort of drawing a line there. Because I think often if you give the impression that every time they come back and say no, if you then go up another few grand, then it's just going to give the impression that they can just keep on doing that and you'll keep on going up and up and up. I think it's sensible to show early that you are a disciplined investor. You have a number and that is a number you're going to stick to. But like you say, Rob, everyone likes to feel like they're getting something in a negotiation. Everyone wants to feel like they're coming away with something. So if you can be seen to have shifted a bit, even though actually you were happy with the end number in the first place, then they'll probably feel happier about it. And also as a result, it's probably less likely to fall through later because they won't be feeling like they've been taken advantage of. So by this point, you've built your relationship, you've decided how to present your offer, you've decided on what the offer is and where to start. Then there's just a few quick things that you can do to put that offer in the best light. So we've talked a lot about seeming serious and seeming professional, not like in a boring suit and tie kind of way, but just seeming like you know what you're doing. That is really important because estate agents in particular, if you're dealing with agents, get messed around so much and they're really sick of it. So that is really important. To help with that, you can, when you're making your written offer, you can attach proof of funds to that. A lot of the time, agents will ask you for proof of funds anyway, especially if it's a situation where the vendor needs to sell quickly. So that can be a decision in principle for a mortgage, or it could be cash, or it could be both to show that you've got the mortgage and the deposit. So having proof of funds will show that you're actually in a position to proceed. If you've got a track record, then hopefully this will have come out in conversation already. But if not, point to things that you've done in the past, point to the fact that you've got experience, point to deals you've done in the past where you've managed to complete them quickly, maybe show that you're set up to do that. And another important psychology play, Show that you're not wedded to this deal happening. And of course, you actually in reality shouldn't be. When you fall in love with the deal, when you really, really want it to happen, that will always come across in some way. It'll put you in a weaker position. So you should be in a position of, not really being that bothered if it happens or not. And make sure that comes across. Explain that you're looking at multiple properties. This isn't the only deal. You're not going to get dragged into a bidding war. You're not going to be around forever. And just try to sort of maneuver yourself into having a position of influence without being super annoying and big-headed about it. So really, this all sort of clusters around the same kind of thing, doesn't it? It's actually knowing what you're doing and then being able to present yourself as somebody who knows what they're doing and somebody who's businesslike, but also pleasant to deal with, because that goes a long way.
Yeah, that's it, really. That's it. We should have just said that, Rob. Be friendly and professional and then put your offer in. Well, as we explained, there's a little bit more to it than that, but they're the key takeaways. The professional bit, I think, is so important. Rob's really tried to push that one home, but it is so important because you will stand out from the person who's going, oh, what do you think I should do? Or is that a good offer? Questioning your offer and stuff. Be professional, be confident in what you're doing. But internally, be confident. Be prepared to move on. There's always another opportunity. There's always another deal. Yes, it's not always easy, but the second you start getting emotional, the harder it's going to be for you and the easier it's going to be for the agent because they're going to sense that and maximize the price for their vendor. So you've got it now. You've got our tools. That's how we approach it. It's not rocket science. It's just effective. It's just professional. But if you do what we've just run through, you'll be a lot more successful with your offers. I'm sure of it. But that's our way of doing it. Doesn't mean it's the best way. As I said before, we've changed our approach over the years. This is where we've settled now. It seems spookily, or not surprisingly really, that our approach is very, very similar. But what works for other people? Have they got some tricks? Is there something that we haven't stumbled across yet? Almost certainly, we don't know it all. So we'd love for people to share their approach in the forum.
Yeah, definitely. This is the kind of topic where everyone's going to have little things to add, little tricks that have worked for them, stories about where they've put some of these things into action, maybe, or actually gone against some of these principles and got a good result that way. Do let us know. Go over to the forum, thepropertyhub.net/forum, and continue the discussion there. We'd love to see how you go about getting your offer accepted. We also love resources of the week. We've got one of those, but more than any of this, we love your iTunes reviews. Rob, which kind reviewer do we have this week?
Okay, so a round of applause, please, to the following people. So the first one is from Lamb5TV, and Lamb says, the podcast is a linchpin of a great virtual community, the Property Hub, where you can learn anything you need to about your property journey. It's great to have a pair of accessible experts give you the comfort that the industry support is here. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Lamb. And Conpal says, I cannot praise Rob and Rob highly enough. I'm a newbie to the property world and stumbled across Rob Dick's Ultimate Guide back in June 16. I haven't looked back. I've listened to the Ultimate Guide twice over, listened to the whole back catalogue of the podcast. I'm a subscriber to the magazine, subscriber to Property Geek, purchased the Ultimate Starter Pack, hopefully deal with RMP in the near future. As you can tell, I'm as much of a Rob and Rob enthusiast as I am a property enthusiast. This is a must listen for anybody interested in property, as their insight and knowledge is invaluable. It's immediately evident that they know their stuff, and coupled with the endless resources they offer, you would be doing yourself a massive disservice by not listening. I continue to spread the name to anybody I stumble across who has a slight interest in this field. I hope to put my knowledge into action this year, and any success I may have will be in no small part down to them both. Thanks, Rob and Rob's mums. No, Compal, that was actually a legitimate review. Thank you so much. Very kind words.
Wow, that is quite something. Thank you so much. That is awesome to hear. Right, okay, let's see if we can repay you in some small way with our resource of the week. We can't take credit for this one. Thank you to Matt for sending this one in. This is a piece of research. I'm not sure quite where it comes from, but it was published by the Yorkshire Building Society. And the most important thing is it comes with an interactive map. We do love one of those. So this shows affordability across the UK. So this is basically the ratio of average yearly wages to average house prices. That's one way of calculating affordability. We've talked about different ways in the past, in a previous episode, actually. But this is what it shows. You can see how it varies across the country. But the really cool part is it's got a little slider, so you can go back in time. You can go all the way back to 2007, so back over the last 10 years, and see how that affordability has changed across the country in time. So one way of doing it is looking at the local area that you're interested in and seeing how that has changed, but also just looking at the overall pattern is really interesting. You can see because it's color-coded how in 2007, the whole of the South basically, and quite a lot of the North as well, is really unaffordable. And you can see how that completely shifts post-crunch, and the whole map goes green because everything's suddenly affordable because house prices have fallen. And now you can see everything's sort of going back again. And you can see how the Southeast now has become unaffordable again, and it's sort of gradually spreading, but still, for the most of the country, a lot better than it was 10 years ago.
So thank you for that one. Another interactive map. We are happy. People know what we like. Another thing we like to be, Rob, is consistent. So we will be back next Thursday with the Property Podcast, where we'll be looking at how to find and buy land. Haven't really done much on land over the hundreds of podcasts we've now done, but as I've got a little bit of direct experience, Rob, and I know we've been talking about it a bit off the podcast recently, we probably should start talking about it on the podcast. So you may not be ready to purchase your first piece of land and build out, but it may be something you want to do in the future. Or it may be something that's been on your radar for a while and you want to get started if not known how. Well, next week we start to crack that nut for you. I'm going to look at how to find and buy land.
Yep, looking forward to that one next Thursday. And as an extra treat next Thursday, it is Meetup Day. So if you haven't booked your place yet, get along to thepropertyhub.net/meetups. Until then, have a fantastic week and we'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. For show notes, all our past episodes, and to leave a review, go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast.